Hello, sexies, and welcome to the podcast that keeps them popping and we don't plan on stopping. What's our topic? Hmm, Sex,
Obviously.
obviously. All right. Well, let's get into it. We have a great topic today. And Doc, why don't you tell them what it is?
All right, so today we are talking about sexual vetting. What is it? Why is it important? Why can't you skip this step? And how can you do it effectively? So, I think in some of our previous episodes, we've alluded to vetting process. I think people have heard about vetting. People vet when they're dating, but why don't people vet about sex? I would think that part of some of the topics that we've covered about dead bedroom situations, about communication, happiness, initiation, a lot of that can be sort of mitigated if you do the proper sexual vetting up front when you're starting
Mhm.
to partner or date someone. And
Yeah.
so I think in the common understanding of sexual vetting, it comes from the BDSM kink world. And that's
Mhm.
not necessarily what we mean here. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But vetting, in any sense, is the act of really digging in and getting to know someone, asking appropriate questions, making sure
Yeah.
that their ideas align with your ideas in terms of how you want to exist together, what your goals are, and how you want to move forward in a
Yeah.
relationship, right? And
Yeah.
so when we talk about sexual vetting, it is the same idea, but aligning your sexual desires, your needs, your drive, what it is that you want to experiment with, what it is that is a hard no for you, and aligning on that up front, right?
Yes. Yes. And that is, I mean, that upfront part is a thing that I think most of the people, for lack of a better word, when I say vanilla, I don't mean it in a pejorative way. I mean like just most people have what you would call a sort of vanilla sex life. And I think it's all about
Yeah.
everyone's thinking um our desires and all of these things are just likely to be along the same lines in a typical romantic relationship, right?
Right.
But yeah, but then and it's no surprise that vetting would come from the BDSM world. Why? Because now you're doing things that are outside of the norm, right? It's like,
Correct.
okay, well, if somebody's going to be spanking you with a flogger or something like that, you gotta
Please
know,
and
okay,
thank you.
how right, but how hard too, right? Like
Very.
because right, yes,
Sorry, I
but see,
digress. Go ahead.
no, but see how good you are at vetting, right? Like, or being a part of the vetting process because your communication is open and
Right.
you're saying exactly what you think about the thing, which is important when somebody's going to be smacking you with a paddle, and even more
Thank you.
important when you don't know who they are or how hard they're likely to swing. You remember that time we were at the place and the
Whew.
gentleman had his first opportunity to swing with a paddle on a
Yes.
young lady. Yeah, she was
And
excited
lost it
about it. Yes, you lost your paddle privileges immediately.
for the rest of
Why?
the trip.
Yeah, no, it was over with. It was
It was
completely
done.
done. No, you never got to do it again. Not only with her, but literally no one else. Why? Because it swung it too hard. The communication wasn't there. He didn't know what he was doing. And literally everybody in the entire room was like, yeah, no, you can't have somebody just swinging off on people like they had set they online it had set or something like that, getting straight up hazed. That's not it. And
Right.
so
Right.
when you have solid communication, then you avoid awkward moments like that. And I
Right.
think a lot of times in a traditional relationship, people end up in a whole bunch of awkward moments because they really don't know what it is the other person likes or is looking for because everybody's making assumptions.
Right. And so, and assumptions can, make an ass out of you and everybody around you, right? And
Yes.
so, in terms of vetting, online all the time, I'm in social media constantly, right? People name all of their must haves up front, especially in these singles communities, about what it is that they want, what it is that they're looking for, what they want the person to bring to the table, right?
Hmm.
And how they go through the vetting process and dating. And it's very detailed, right? It's
Hmm.
all about, Some people talk about finances. Some people talk about like emotional availability,
Yeah.
career choices even gets part of that. You know,
Yep.
who's paying at dinner. All of those things are talked about, and they're talked about really openly. And it's part of the natural vetting when two people are trying to come, two or three or four people are trying to come together and coexist in a thing, right? In a dynamic. And so my question has always been, well, why don't you go through that process when you're talking about sex? So you get with a person, right? And you vetted them in all ways, you know, every which way from Sunday, up, down, from the rooter to the tutor, right? You done
Yeah.
vetted them. And then you're in this relationship and you don't know that this person only wants sex once a month?
Yeah. No, I think part of it is like people don't want to ask questions that they don't want to the answer to, but also people don't want to ask questions that they will have to answer. And so sometimes, and really, when you think about both sides of that coin, really what it is holding out information about yourself
Right.
or not really seeking information about the other person or discounting the thing. Like anything that you feel like you can do without discussing or really understanding what it is that the other person in the
Right.
relationship wants from it, you are not prioritizing it.
At
Just being
all.
real. You're not prioritizing
Right.
it. You can say you are, you can say you want to do the thing, but in terms of really being able to do it well, if you aren't seeking information from the other person and you aren't giving information to the other person, right? Then how are you supposed to build?
Right. And so when I was, you know, researching the topic because it came up, um, we're in some groups together and some groups separately, and this came up
Mm-hmm.
where there was a list of priorities and and things that are important in a relationship, right? And sex was on there, attractiveness, career, finances, goals. There was a whole bunch
Mm-hmm.
of things on a list of priority, and it asked the members to rank their priorities when they're in their relationship or when you're looking for another person. And almost every single woman to a T put sex close to the bottom of that list. Except for me, of course. Mine was
Yeah.
number one. Sex was number one. Then it was money.
Of course.
Then you
Of
gotta be
course.
cute, maybe, and smart. But I'm keeping it
Hey,
real.
I'm cute
Listen,
definitely, but
you
I,
you fine as hell. Anyway,
I
but I'm listen. I'm gonna be honest with our audience, right? I think over a course of a couple of episodes, they got to know us a little bit, and they know sex is, you know, very high
yeah.
on our list. Actually,
I mean, obviously.
of chief of chief importance to how we relate to each other, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
it was interesting to see the gender breakdown of where sex
Right.
fell on that list. Almost every single woman put it on the bottom or close to the
Yeah.
bottom. 4 out of 5, right? And almost every single man put it close to the top, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was thinking about it, and we're thinking about, so these are singles groups, and these are people trying to date each other, right?
Yeah.
These are people
Yep.
trying to date each other, and I'm like, aha, this is really interesting to see how what it is that you think is important and what it is that that counterpart thinks is important is completely misaligned, right?
Yes.
And so when you're talking and you're vetting and you go through the process, a lot of women that I speak to don't really talk about sex in the process at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
then they get into a relationship. And a lot of men don't talk about it either because they're, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, afraid to be off putting to a woman when they know that that is something that women don't want to hear early in the
Yeah.
relationship process.
I
They
think
know
I,
that, like, I can't talk about sex too quickly or she's going to be
right.
turned off and walk away. And
Right.
what I would like to
Right.
say is you need to talk about sex first.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Why is it that they think that? It's all, let me shake my fist at the patriarchy again. Damn you, patriarchy. Right?
Got
Because
us
guess,
again.
Right. Because guess what? Now a woman has to be all virtuous, right? She can't be thinking about sex at first. And then the man has to be gallant. He's like, well, I, of course, do not want sex because I'll need to know you in your innermost feelings before I get innermost inside you. And the interesting thing about that is
And you're not gonna know
everybody
my feelings until
lying.
you get inside of me.
Right. And everybody's lying. It's the same way when, and I don't believe in that, oh, tell me about your body count stuff, right? Because I
Yeah, we're
think
not
it's
doing that.
ridiculous.
We're
I feel
adults.
like
We're
this,
not even gonna address that. We're adults.
I
We're
feel
not
like
doing
it's
that.
ridiculous,
Mm-mm.
but both genders lie. I don't know what happens with all of the intermixed genders, but I mean, men lie and inflate, women lie and deflate. Why? Because there's societal pressure for a woman to be virtuous and a virgin, and
And
for a
not ran
man,
through. Don't be ran
right,
through, girl.
and a man to be a stud and a steed, right? And we have been around long enough to listen to enough people to recognize that there are women who aren't getting enough sex from their men, and there are men who aren't getting enough sex from their women, right? Like
Absolutely.
all of, and so I feel like the real truth is somewhere in between, obviously, based, with respect to those numbers that you got in that little online survey. Everybody's lying.
Everybody's lying.
Sex is more important to women than they want to let on. Either that,
Absolutely.
you know, and that's why a lot of people don't feel the level of closeness to one another in a relationship because there's no physical intimacy. A lot
Right.
of times men are motivated by physical intimacy and physical touch. If you're not
100%.
touching your partner, they're not going to feel close to you
If you
in many
ask
cases
most
among
men
many
what their
men.
love
They're
language
tactile.
is,
Yeah,
physical touch is at the top of the list. If you
right.
ask most men what their language is, it's going to be physical touch.
Sure is.
Right. And I feel like
So
people,
if
yeah,
you
go
know
ahead.
that,
Hmm.
right, then deprioritizing sex or deprioritizing sex in the vetting process is
Right.
going to almost always get you in a position where you're not finding out what's important to that other person.
Right. And sometimes you're lying to yourself,
Right.
right? Because you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, this is a nice guy. I like this guy. He's got all the other things on paper that I like. And you've talked about things that you should talk about on paper, the stuff that you would put on the application if you were showing it to your mama.
Right.
Right. But the stuff that's actually going to make you get through the day to day and help you enjoy yourself and give you the stress reliever you need might just be what's hanging between his legs. And if you haven't talked about that, he might be the person where it just hangs. You see what I'm saying? Like, and so he's
Child.
he's a great he's a great provider. He's a nice guy. He's gallant and wonderful in all the ways.
And he's
And
limp.
he,
And so
yeah, he
now what? So
right,
now what? What you gonna do
right,
with that?
right. Now, if you would talk to
Cause
him
you
and
can't
he
you can't bang the account.
no, you can't. You can't. And if you start banging other people among men who are gallant and successful and all the rest of this, then you won't have the accounts anymore. That's the way it works. So now you're in a miserable catch 22
Right.
that you could have been out of just by asking the right questions up front and being honest with one another about what your needs are. Right. And it's not just honesty in terms of that communication. It's openness, right? You got to be open
That's
enough to
it.
realize that
Openness.
something that's important to you is worth talking about. And so, I'm gonna get off my soapbox on that, but I'm just
No,
saying.
stay on the soapbox. And so, article I was reading is that in terms of the vetting process, right? And so it says that sex should absolutely be part of the vetting process up front, right? And it shouldn't be a conversation that is rushed. And it should not be superficial. So when you're talking about sex and how you feel about that, and you're trying to vet for someone's sexual appetite and actually compatibility, right? When we're talking about vetting, we're talking about sexual
Yeah,
compatibility,
that's what it's about.
right? That's what it's about. And so it's not something that you can rush through. It's not something that is a one conversation thing. And it's not something that can be surface, right? There
Hmm.
should be a considerable amount of time. I'm reading from the article, and there should be some depth to the conversation because without it, it is the cause of so many relationship problems down the road.
Yes. And, the differences that arise, just for two people who are all right and all together on paper, and they enjoy spending time with one another, enjoy one another's company, right? The These are the things that can really blow the relationship up
Right.
and make it so that you don't enjoy spending time with one another,
Right.
right? And not having the conversation could be a symptom of a lot of things, right? It could be a symptom of potentially being mismatched, right? But also, a person who is avoidant about the idea of talking about sex at all might have a complete aversion to it.
Right.
And so that if you are super religious, right? The super religious people who are like, until there is marriage, very serious commitment, and we know I'm going down that way, we're not going to touch one another, or we're not going to actually have sex, right? It's even more important to talk about sex if you're in that situation, right? the
Right.
more the more closed off you are from just being open about sex, or having sex in general, the more restrictive you are about something, the more that you have to communicate about how to make it work, right? Because if neither of you are having sex, and then one person has an expectation of having it every day, and another person has an expectation of having it once a week or once every 2 weeks, and thinking that that is enough, you're automatically going to be mismatched, right?
Right, because in that situation, even if you're super religious and you've agreed, right, that
Yeah.
y'all are not going to engage in that activity until marriage, right, you still
Yep.
need to talk about what it will look like and what
Correct.
your expectations are once you get to that desired location, right, to that
Yeah.
desired, you know, dynamic, right? So
Yeah.
because you cannot assume that it's naturally going to turn on and that you're going to be in sync. So if
Yeah.
y'all have agreed that you're not going to engage until marriage, the vetting is so important before then.
Yep.
Because if you get married and she's saying, well, okay, we're married, we're free, we're, sanctioned, to be doing this, and
Right.
it's right in the eyes of God, right? I want to be doing
Yep.
it every morning, noon, and night, and you're saying, wait a minute, you're my wife, and uh I
Right.
still expect this level of virtue from you, then y'all
He
mismatched
like, we're not
anyway.
trying. We're not trying to have a baby yet. You're
Right.
like, wait a minute.
If
You
your
see what I'm
idea of
saying?
sex is for procreation and his idea of
Right.
sex is for entertainment, then y'all
Right.
are unaligned anyway. So you might be aligned on the waiting, but you still
Yeah.
need to vet. Right? You still
Yes.
need to vet because you're not aligned on the frequency, the purpose of it, the how, the what it is that you like,
Yeah.
the positioning, the things that make you comfortable, the things that turn you on, the things that turn you off. You're not aligned on any of those things. And so vetting is a process that needs to happen for every single relationship. Even if you got a friend with benefit situation, that is important to figure
Well,
out what it is that you like and
that's
don't like then too, because that could be a
yeah.
wasted fuck buddy. What?
Well, I mean,
You wasted my
that's what the whole
time.
I was gonna say, that's what the whole relationship is. So
Right.
if you can't communicate on the entire basis of what the relationship is,
Right.
then yeah, no, that is, again, one place where you are expected to be truthful. No feelings hurt or anything like that,
Right.
because
Correct.
everybody is in it, from a, this is a almost no strings except friendship and all the rest of that, but it's not, the stakes aren't quite that high.
Man, if your penis is bad and we are friends with benefits, there are no benefits and there's probably no friends.
Well, yeah, no, it
Because
really
I don't
does
have time
dissolve
for
the
this.
whole
You
thing
have
pretty
really
quickly, doesn't
wasted
it?
all of my coochie coupons. Goodbye.
Well, that and
Like, bye.
and again, there's the vetting in terms of the conversations that you have, and then even like all kinds of information that you're getting in is sending you signals, right? So even if you aren't having sex, you embrace it, you touch it. I'm sure there's some level of petting that happens. You don't feel anything happening down below from him at all. You can't
Right.
feel it. He's not liking it. He may have issues with erectile dysfunction. He may have size issues. There could be all sorts of things
It
that
might
you
be a hot
probably would
dog in a
like to
hallway
know.
situation.
Right. You
You
probably want
just
to
in
know that.
there just flopping
But
around, no
I, I'm a
walls.
I'm a person that can enjoy certain surprises,
Right.
but there are some surprises that I don't want. And the surprise of, oh yeah, I'm not really into sex, or I'm only into these elements of sex, or the stuff that you like is stuff that I look at as a sin. Like
Right.
those are not the surprises that I
That's not
want.
when you want a surprise. You don't want to get to the
No.
bedroom and be like, haha, surprise. We have
Yeah.
nothing in common here.
Right.
Right? Where do you go from there?
No, I don't know.
All right. So, since we talked about, what is vetting sexually, right? What is sexual vetting? And also, why is it so important? I think we've nailed that down for our listeners of like, why is it important to vet? But let's talk a little bit about how you do it. What are the types of questions you need to ask during this process in order to gauge someone's sexual compatibility? Right? Because it's important, like, okay, we know we got to do it, right? But what if I don't really naturally know the type of questions I need to ask in order to get the answers I need to determine whether or not this person is compatible with me sexually, or even willing to move the needle a little bit so that we can align,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes on the outset, right, a person may not have the exact same idea. Like we can't pretend that two people that don't know each other from different backgrounds and whatever different experiences are always going to have the exact same like pinpoint match in terms of compatibility when it comes to the bedroom, right? But there are some questions that you can ask to get to that place where you know whether or not that person's flexible enough in order to match you and whether or not you're flexible enough to match that person, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
think we got lucky. Like,
Yeah.
I think because of our previous experiences, we were kind of hungry for a different type of sexual experience, a different
Yes.
type of relationship to sex. We
Definitely.
were both in relationships where the mismatch was vast, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think when you have a vast mismatch like that, at least for me, my sexual experimentation, my desire, my kinkiness ramped up because it's coming from a place of depravity, right? Like it
Well,
came
yeah.
from a place of like I wasn't getting, so like my horniness just shot through the roof. And I think
Yeah.
that
That
happened for you too.
Yeah, it's prioritizing it, right? When you've
Mm-hmm.
had an experience that didn't work out well, that's usually going to be among the first things that you're looking for to make sure that you don't
Right.
replicate whatever mistake that you made before.
Right.
So,
So when we met, we were like, okay, we're not even gonna play these games. We've gotten burnt before. We just
yeah.
gonna come out the gate. How do
It,
you
what,
like to do
yes.
it?
What things are you open to? What things
Right.
are what things are yes, please, what things are maybe, what things are no, right? Those
Right.
things, and I feel like the more that you can sort of really just get to it and
Right.
ask very pinpoint questions and then leave room for open answers and then be able to drill down and then also be open to that same level
Right.
of
You can cut
transparency.
through all of the nonsense.
Yeah.
Like you can cut through all of it because a lot of people have, they're like, I don't want to waste my time. Well, we're going to tell you about how to cut straight to it so that we're not wasting time, right? So, one of the questions that you want to ask is about the importance of sex in that person's life. Where do you place sex on your list of priorities? And what types of activities do you count or not count as sex? Because some people do not count oral sex as sex, right? Some
Yeah,
people
I've heard
only
this.
think about sex as penetrative, right? And so you want to know how important it is to that person, right? And then you want to know what it is in the list of activities that can happen that you say, oh, I count this as having had sex, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Another question you want to ask is about limitations. There can be medical or physical limitations, right, that a person that has that won't allow for certain levels of activity or frequency of activity. And so you want to know if there are any of those type of things, because it is really really hard to sit there and be frustrated with someone about, not being able to do a thing, and they haven't even told you that, like, they physically or medically, like, health wise,
Can't do it.
can't
Yeah.
do that thing, right? Or they're on some
Sure.
type of medication that affects their libido, right?
Right.
And
Yeah. No,
so
that's important.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, and it can be awkward too, right?
Right.
Because you want to talk about these things as early as you can, but also people again in dating are trying to introduce their representative, right? And so not all the things that I like are necessarily the best introductory thing for me to have. So I think these are good questions in that you
Right.
can ask somebody how they prioritize and think about sex without it being like too explicit or too detailed, or you maybe feeling like you're giving up a little too much information at first.
Right. And I think that it's important to make the distinction that I'm not saying that you're getting raunchy in this conversation. This is this is a vetting
Right.
process, right? This is
Yeah.
information gathering. This is data, right? Now, what you do with that data is up to you, but you have to gather the data to determine where you can go. If you don't ask the
Right.
question, you don't have the data inputs, right? And then therefore, you cannot make appropriate decisions. You're flying blind, right? And so,
Yeah.
as someone, yes, I'm Dr. JJ and you're Dr. Love, but the doctor in front of the name is not like it's
Yeah.
not
It's
to
not
be
like Drake.
cute.
Like it's a real doctorate. Yeah. No, it's a
Right.
real
It's not
doctorate.
to be cute
Yeah.
on a
That's it.
podcast. We are
Yeah.
both, right, quantitative researchers. And so bringing in this perspective for our listeners to know that we're talking about gathering data sets here, right? We're
Right.
talking about data, we're talking about interpreting data in a way that you can really fine tune the decision making process as to when you're going to move forward or if you're going to move forward with someone, right? And
Yeah.
so so those questions were on the list. I'm going down the list of things
Yeah.
from my article. They also talk about, these are some later questions, but you want to then talk about what it is that someone is willing to do, has done, is not willing to do, curious about, right? You want to talk about those activities. It is important to name that. These are the things that I have done. These are the things that I'm willing to do. These are the things that I'm curious about. And these are the things that are absolutely a red stop sign for me, right? And so that part I think is really key, because then
Yes.
you can gauge like how flexible a person is in terms of growing together sexually. Because let's be honest, we started at a very high level with each other, but we've grown.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point. The fact is, this isn't a conversation that just happens once.
Mm-hmm.
The questions can change and get more detailed, more explicit, more real.
Right.
So, in terms of that, what I'm curious about, what I want, what I don't want, all of those things, at first, it can be more vanilla stuff. But I would encourage people to continue
that conversation and really be real with themselves about what they like and want. And that list is likely to change over time,
Right.
or at least
Change
I hope it
too.
does. I hope you're open and curious, right? And
Right.
so the vetting process, although I know, vetting happens initially, it's a helpful conversation to continue to have because people grow and change. And this is one of the ways in which people can grow and change apart from one another. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so like
Now
the
that's key.
vetting is
Like, go
almost one
ahead
of
and
those
stamp
things
that for the
that's
listeners. This is a way in which you can grow and change apart. Like, we hope that you grow and change together when you're having healthy sexual conversations, but not doing this is a way in which y'all can really grow separately.
right.
Right.
Right, because you may or may not be engaging in things that one person doesn't like, and they just end up doing for the other person, but they get no enjoyment out of it, and in
Mm-hmm.
many cases grow to hate it. And then there's resentment for doing something then that your partner doesn't even know that you dislike,
Right.
right? And so it can be important in so many different ways, because then the partner is sitting there wondering that they take either your reluctance or the fact that you don't seem excited about it as some sort of indictment about them, right?
Right.
But they
Right.
keep doing something that they really like that you hate. And so those are, you don't want to be in
Woo!
that
Been there,
situation.
done that.
Right. You don't want to be in that situation where
I
you
think
are
we all
constantly
have, though.
subjected to sex,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so that there's got to be balance in terms of, what it is that you're willing to give versus get and all the rest of that type of stuff. But then there also should be some level of
Right.
enjoyment, even if it's you just altruistically enjoying the person, enjoying themselves. That can be a thing that works. But if you hate something and you don't feel motivated to do it, and you don't feel some level of appreciation coming from the other person, when you feel as though
Right.
you've compromised yourself,
Because
then
everybody needs
every
the
time,
feedback, right? Like, when I'm
right,
doing a thing and I'm engaged in this activity, I need that positive reinforcement. I need the feedback, right? And so if I'm doing something to you or with you that you feel like you're subjected to endure,
right,
I'm not going to get the feedback that I need to continue on. You need that feedback. So it's important to
Right,
talk
you
about
do.
those things. Yeah. And I
Yep.
think
It,
also too with that, if I may, it's important to discuss like the 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 ways in which you enjoy certain things, right? Some people are givers only of certain activities, and some people are really
right.
forgiving and receiving. I think it's important to discuss the directionality of the activity as well.
Yes. No, that's true. I mean, you've got to know that something that you think this person is likely to enjoy because past partners of yours enjoyed it,
Mm-hmm.
it's better to be a little bit more certain about those things, right? Because you're doing something vigorous that has been enjoyed by other people vigorously before, and it's being endured by this person that's in front of you. That's a
Yeah,
problem,
that's a
right?
good point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I mean that can be a huge problem, and it can be one of those problems if you're not communicating. And here's why the vetting up front is important, right?
Right.
Because now you start. They say start off how you want to go, right?
Right.
If you're not talking in the first place, people would think, "Oh, our communication will deepen and get better." No, it won't.
It won't. If you
No,
start off not
it
speaking,
won't.
it's not gonna get better. It won't.
Nope. Right.
It
The
won't.
conversations could get deeper if you're talking at first and you are building that communication muscle. Just like anything else, some things have to be built over time, right?
It's a
And so if you're
muscle. Yep.
starting off and not talking about it, the likelihood is you were
You're not
assuming
gonna be talking
before.
about it.
Exactly. So you're exercising your assumption muscle. And those assumption muscles are very close to the calf muscles that propel you out the door when you're walking away, right? That's where
Not the
your assumption
assumption
muscles.
muscles or the calf muscles that propel you out the door. Y'all, did
I
y'all hear
promise you,
this
that's
man?
exactly how it goes,
You
right?
make assume
Because
you going. You gonna walk right
Right.
out the door on that
Right.
assumption.
Because
Right.
what happens is people, it goes from the this thing was okay when we first got together. Sometimes it might have even been cute, right? To annoying to now unbearable, right? And
Right.
now because of the fact that you all didn't discuss any of this going along the way, you didn't discuss it as it started to go from cute to annoying, and then when it went from annoying to unbearable, that's when you might have discussed it, right? And when you
Right.
start discussing it from the place of unbearable,
It's over. It's too
those
late.
discussions really go well, because
Because it's
now
emotion, it's
because
anger, it's frustration, it's all of those
you
things. So
resentful,
you resentful, right? So if you have
right,
now started your sexual conversation from a place of this isn't working, you
right,
it's already the wrong time to start this conversation. You should have had this conversation from the very gate,
right,
from go. You should have had
right.
that conversation. And I want to be clear. Um, we are grown folks. I think a lot of times we are grown and we are adulting in so many different ways, but when we talk about sex, we're teenagers, we're
Mm-hmm.
children, we're
Yep.
juvenile, right?
Yeah.
And we have very cursory understandings of sex and very, very young minded conversations. If you are adulting and you're grown and you're on your grown man or woman or he, them, they, I want to be inclusive of everybody, right? Conversation, then you need to be grown when you speak about sex. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be an adult and mature when you're talking about sex. Sex is a very immature topic for a lot of people.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
when they treat it as an immature thing, they engage in it immaturely, and it will really mess up your very adult relationship, right?
Yes.
So let's not, because I can imagine people hearing this conversation and feeling very like shoulders hunched over, embarrassed about it. We're adults, okay? We're grown. You if you can't if we're not willing to talk about sex very early on, when are you willing to talk about it?
I mean,
It's not going to happen by through osmosis. He's not. And a lot of my sisters, I'm telling you, they will say, well, he should just know my body. How, sis? How?
right.
How he
Yeah,
gonna know?
that
How
don't
you
make no
want him
sense.
to know?
That
You want
doesn't make
he is
sense.
he's telepathic now. You want
Yeah.
him to read your mind. You want him to like perform Santeria and do like the tea leaf and like feel your spirit. Sis, that is a unrealistic expectation and it's juvenile. It's
It's the
immature.
recipe for disappointment. It's the
Correct.
recipe for
You gonna be
disappointment.
mad, he gonna be mad, everybody big mad. When you
Yeah,
could have just opened your mouth.
you got a whole Christmas list in your head and mad on Christmas Day because none of it's under the tree, but you ain't
Correct.
send it to Santa.
You
You
ain't sent it to Santa.
you gotta
Santa don't even know if you
you
was
know
naughty or nice. You ain't even
right.
sent the. You ain't wrote the letter. You ain't sent
You
the
ain't
list.
did
You have
you ain't
no
did none
idea.
of it. You ain't
Yeah.
did none of it,
And
right?
he's sitting here doing what it is that he thinks he knows to do.
Yeah, and you know what? But men do it too. We do the same thing,
Oh yeah,
right?
I was gonna
And
let you talk about it. I wasn't gonna talk about the
okay,
men.
I was gonna
I was
say,
talking to my sisters because sometimes they need to see the face and hear
yeah,
the message. Because a lot of times on these in the web streets, right? You've got
uh,
men talking to women about women's business. You got women
yeah,
talking to men about men's business. I'm talking to my sisters and telling them, no, you
yeah,
wrong there. That's it. That is unrealistic. So go ahead and talk to your brothers and let them
yeah.
know.
No, because I'm gonna be real. We as men put on airs. Every single man out there, and I see it all the time on social media and everywhere else, we project this image that we are always ready to have sex.
And y'all
We
don't be.
predict, yeah, exactly. We project this image that, if there is a lack of sex in a relationship, is because the woman doesn't want it and the guy is always trying to get it. You see it on sitcoms and everywhere else, right?
Hmm.
But the facts are,
Right.
men suffer both from low testosterone in many cases, and it's more prevalent now than it's ever been, as well as erectile dysfunction. A lot of us are not ready, and I've been unready at times in my life. Not recently, but I'm just saying I've been
I'm about to
unready at
say
times in my.
when was that at? Because it wasn't
Now,
with. I am not she. It was not with her. Not
I'm
me.
saying this
When
is
have
also
you
true.
not been ready? You be.
I'm saying at times in my life, even though you project this image that you
Mm-hmm.
are always ready, that
Right.
you are willing to have sex with any woman that's ready to go with you.
And you
That's
a
what it
super
is.
freak.
Yeah, yes. But the fact is, there are conditions under which I can perform better
Right.
or worse or not at all. And I
Right.
promise you that's true for every man, right?
Right.
There are conditions under which I'm all in and enjoying it. I'm in a position where, okay, this is cool. And then I'm in a position where I need to grab my stuff and go home, right?
Take
Like
your
that's,
ball and leave.
it's,
I'm leaving the playground.
right. This ain't for me. And that's okay. But you need to know
Right.
yourself. When you were talking about the questions that people can ask, I think one of the first things you need to do is ask yourself the questions and then write down a list of the stuff that you really
Yes.
like. Like write
That's
down like
true. I
your
neglected to
own
say
criminal
that.
list. Your
Before
criminal
you
list.
before you ask somebody else, know what it is that you
Yes.
need yourself. You
Right.
can't be vetting someone else if you haven't vetted yourself internally. Right?
Right.
You've got to vet what's in here first and know what it is that and don't sometimes, and I have been guilty of this in the past. Not now. I am not her anymore. I was not even truthful with myself about
Right.
how I felt about sex and what I needed. Because I was internally ashamed of the
Yes.
nasty ass shit that I.
Yeah, no, that's me too. You ain't supposed to. You're not supposed to
Something
like
is
this.
wrong with you, girl. Why you
Yes.
hanging off the bed upside down, having them fuck your throat? What's wrong with you? Don't tell
Nothing.
the people that you like nut on your face. Just miss my eyelashes because these are expensive. But I wasn't even truthful with myself
Yes.
about what it is that I needed in terms of what makes someone truly sexually compatible with me. I have since been liberated from that, right? And so the reason why, I'm not going to say it's the reason. No, I'm going to say it's one of the reasons. It's probably the reason why this works so well is because we are both filthy,
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's
And
true.
and are aspirationally more filthy, right?
That
Like
is true. We strive.
we
We strive for
strive
it.
to
We do. We
be
strive for additional filth. It's true.
oh
It's true.
just
We be trying to
dirty.
out nasty each other. It's the
We
whole thing.
do, and so we wear each other the hell out. So at the end of the day, both of us done TKO'd each other, and we lay
Yes.
in there like, oh Lord,
Yeah. And see,
whew.
that's the thing. It can be
What can we
like that.
try again? What should we add something else to the pot? Right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think if I had not gotten real with myself about that, I would have never been able to exist in this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't think I would be the version of myself that I am in general. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have sort of natural proclivities, and then you have skills and behaviors that you cultivate and feel comfortable with and enjoy.
Right.
Right. And so you may have the aptitude to do freaky things, but you have not done them. You have not practiced any of these things. So you feel uncomfortable
Correct.
trying them. You may be
Correct.
interested, you may be curious, but you're just not necessarily ready and certainly not ready to dive headlong into it. And so the person who you are with should know that,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Especially if because if you're going to be a couple, you should be aspiring to something together. And I would say greater sexual heights is a great goal to have. Now, it may
Right.
not look the same as what that means for us,
But the cool thing about it is y'all get to determine it for yourselves. But in order to be able to
Right.
do that effectively, you each have to know yourselves before you can effectively know one another.
So I think that is really important. And I think that also another thing to keep in mind is watch how someone reacts when you are talking about sex, right? And so, in talking about this process, we're going through sexual vetting, we're trying to gauge compatibility, and we're trying to do it up front. Pay attention to people's body language. Pay attention to that unspoken level of comfortability or uncomfortability that person has when talking about sex. I think that because people can answer your questions, but your body tells a lot. Your body can betray you, right? It can
Yep.
tell you so many other things about a person that you're not going to get by just having the conversation, right? If you are talking about sex and you're trying to gauge their compatibility and the person you're talking to is enthusiastic and open and wanting to have the conversation, that tells you one thing, right? If you are prying and you are pulling answers out of a person and they are closed off and their body language seems very uncomfortable, they're shifting in their seat and all of that, that tells you something else. And you want to pay attention to that because those feelings don't necessarily change that much, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's you. You get a lot of communication verbally, but also you get communication in terms of what somebody is showing you when they're talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if they smile, if they lean in,
Right.
if their arms are open and their hands and they're talking about it, like you said, they get enthusiastic versus they lean back, maybe they put their head on their chin, they do what we do, like those types of things. As a guy,
Right.
those are things that we do. We may be saying the right things, but also, like you said, your body's betraying you. It's telling you another story. It's
Right.
telling you that I'm not as open about this as I'm trying to let
And I'm saying
on.
what it is that I
Because at the
think
end of
I
the
should
that
say
I
in
think
this
you want,
moment,
yeah, well, that,
but
yeah,
it's not
this
how
is what
I
he or she
actually
wants to hear.
feel.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And since this is, a vetting episode, you have to be the key to vetting in anything is paying attention, right? The whole
Right.
thing we talked about is asking questions of yourself, yes, but also asking questions of the other person and being willing to be open and
Right.
exchange, right? That's
Absolutely.
the whole thing. It's about being open and exchanging. Well, you're also giving messages and receiving messages through what it is that you're doing with your body. And so it when you're asking the questions, I think you want to have as much of an easy demeanor as possible, right? You don't want to throw a person off and say, when you're asking the question, notice the questions were pretty neutral. Why? Because you don't want to make a person feel pressured to
Right.
answer in a way that's
Exactly.
inconsistent
So the way you
with what it
phrase the
is they actually
question
feel.
definitely matters,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And it can affect that person's body language, the phrasing, but the questioning itself is not it is a very neutral question, right?
right. And I think you should be neutral when you ask it so
Right.
that you're not leading the person
To the answer you liked for them to have, but rather, and that's why
Right.
surveys and little compatibility surveys and checklists can be very effective, right? You
Right.
just go ahead and truthfully fill out the survey and like just say, oh, this I like, this is a no, this is a yes. Now you can have a conversation and read each other's answers and then like, oh, maybe be pleasantly surprised or be in a position where you're like, oh, okay, this is a thing I
Yeah.
really like and this is a hard no for them.
That's why I
Then you
mentioned
could,
before in a previous episode about my vetting sheet, right? Like that
yeah,
vetting sheet sparks communication, as I said before, but it also like allows me to be truthful about myself without actually thinking about what I think the other person wants me to put on this paper.
Yes, right? Because you're trying to get to the most to the realist sort of this is what this person is about type deal. And if you
Authentic.
yeah, you want it to be authentic. And if you're putting your thumb on the scale, then you're probably not going to get the answer
Right.
that is the real answer. And the problem is this isn't something that you can fake, right? And so the person
Nope.
that now you sitting up there doing something you don't want to do. You got tassels on your nipples and your butt in the air, and you like this is not.
Not tassels. Tassels on your nipples and your butt in there.
Yeah, you like that, and you
Who?
yes, and you feel awkward as a dude because you like this ain't what I
Wait, I
wanted.
thought you were
Whereas
talking about women. You were talking about
that was
yourself.
that was my twist. That was my twist, right?
Wait, do
Because
you want
I
tassels on your nipples?
we'll talk about it later, baby. But you know I like the nipple play and my booty in there is no problem at all, long as I know you
Okay.
behind me.
All
But
right. Ah!
but,
We'll talk about that
but
off,
I'm not.
off camera.
I'm not. Yeah, I know. Now I'm gonna be hearing about tassels from brothers later on. But I'm just saying, like you can't. You don't want to
I
put
love it.
yourself in a position you don't want to be in by
Right.
lying either, right?
Right.
Because I think that's
Exactly.
the other side of it is like, especially among men, you have this pressure to feel like, oh, I'm game for everything. Well, usually except for butt stuff. That's usually the other way in terms of the pressure for men. But I'm
Right.
just saying, like, you have pressures from society
Right.
and you are taking those pressures from society and letting that color your
Right.
interaction with this individual in a way
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to matter when you get into the bedroom.
And what did I say
And
before? Keep
yeah,
society out of your bedroom.
for real.
Keep it out.
Yep.
You
Yep.
have to.
Yep.
Because they you got too many, it's crowded in there.
Well, and that's no matter where you are. Like, if you are a
Yeah.
person that is strictly vanilla and that's all you like, this is where this communication and vetting can be very helpful because now you can find somebody that likes it exactly like you do, and you can be open about that, and you can go into depth and do more of whatever things that you all like to do together without worrying about somebody,
Pressure
being
you into
dissatisfied.
doing something that you
Yeah,
don't want to do. And so
man.
that's the thing. It's not about like we're not yeah, we're freaky. We're talking about freaky stuff, but this is not the vetting is not just for that. It's
Right,
because it's about compatibility, right?
right.
You want to find someone that you can be with that is comfortable with your level, wherever your level is, right?
Mhm.
Is comfortable with your level and you're comfortable with their level. So y'all are speaking the same language. That's what
Yeah,
it really is about. So if your level is here and you
right.
just want to keep it here, you want to make sure that if you have somebody that's here, are they flexible enough to be here? If you have somebody that's here, are they flexible enough to meet you here? You want to get to the level so that y'all are both speaking the same language, y'all are both valuing things the same way, and you can grow together, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so what happens is this. This is
yeah.
where the issues are. Where there's a level here and there's a level here, or there's a level here and here, but this person is not moving and this person isn't moving. So
Yep.
there's still a gap. And
Yeah.
so it's not about kink and all that kind of stuff where it could be a part of it if that's what you're into. But it's really about that basic compatibility to
Yep.
make sure that you are with someone in a way that makes it sustainable,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Because it can't be sustainable if y'all don't know where you are from the beginning and you don't know where you're willing to go.
Yeah. The likelihood is you're going to end up going farther apart, right?
Right.
If you continue to neglect the conversation, you can continue to suppress the things that it is that you want or go along with things that you don't want, then what's going to happen is you will both end up further and further apart from
Right.
what it is that's going to be gratifying and satisfying to you. You're going to be
Exactly.
in a place where you start
thinking negative things in a sexual space about one another.
Right.
And that's not helpful
That's
in any
not where
way,
anybody wants to
right?
be.
And if you continue to neglect the conversation and you continue to neglect communicating, what's going to happen is resentment. It's always going to happen, right? Because
Yeah, that's the end result.
in the absence of information, you're going to make assumptions
Right.
and repeated what feels like rejection if you're really into something and you assume the other person was into something, and it just, we never do this thing that I'm into, and nobody cares about what it is that I want. Those things start building up, and now you get to the point
Yeah.
where you can't even converse with one another without feeling some level of
Yeah.
disgust for one another,
One
and
of
that's not where
the
you want to be.
one of the things that I had, so I had a friend, and she had this aspiration of waiting until marriage for sex, which, if that is your value system, that's who you are. I am not placing judgment on that, right? And I told her that. I'm like, listen, one thing I'm not here to do is judge you. If that is where you are and that's what you want, sure. And then but I did ask the question. Okay, well, how are you going to determine whether or not your partner is going to be able to satisfy you? You're not engaging in the activity. What's your game plan for determining that? How do you know whether or not y'all think about sex in the same way? How do you know whether or not y'all are willing to do certain things if that's not what you are going to do? It wasn't a judgment, it was a question. Like, I just want to know, what's your thought process, right? How do you determine these things? Because what I said to her, I said, I need to test drive the ride.
Yeah.
I need to,
Yes.
like go into a car dealership. I
Right.
need to kick the tires on the thing to determine whether or not I'm going to purchase. That's me. So how are you going to kick the tires, so to speak, without actually engaging?
Did you get a
And
satisfactory answer?
she said to me, well, I think that if you love me and I love you, and we commit to a marriage, and we commit to our values in terms of our relationship with God, then it will naturally progress. I said, wait a minute. I'm not trying to tell you that I don't believe in Jesus in that way. That's not what this conversation is about. I'm trying to tell you, his PP may not work the way you like it. You need to know. You need to know.
Yeah, and I mean, whether it works or not may or may not be an issue.
It may
But
not.
what
I said where it may not work the way you like
you
it.
want it to work, and it
You
may and it
like it.
yeah, and it may not, it may not be something that he prioritizes high at all. And see, here's the
Right.
thing. You haven't prioritized it because you haven't talked about it or communicated it at all. I'm sure you've
Mm-hmm.
talked about your families. I'm sure you've talked
Mm-hmm.
about where you want to live. I'm sure
Talked
you've talked
about
about money
kids.
to some
Talked
degree,
about
although not the money,
money.
like to
You
some
talked
degree.
about jobs, but you ain't talked
Right,
about what is happening
right,
once y'all are man and wife and go into the bedroom and close the door. You have
right.
not talked anything about that.
Yeah, and good luck with that. Because the thing is, you're gonna be in a position where either you have mismanaged your prioritization of sex and it is like more important to you, or maybe more important to the other person,
Right.
or at least as important enough for you to somehow feel connected with one another, right?
Right.
Because it's like, oh, okay, throwing out this whole, we love God and we love one another, and
Right.
love is definitely table stakes for a good relationship.
Right.
But relationships, unlike love, they're conditional, right? And so the
Thank you.
fact is, at some point, despite the love, You can
Right.
very easily be in a place where the relationship becomes
Yeah,
untenable.
and I think you need to like just say that clearly, right? Because relationships, unlike love, are conditional. And
Exactly.
you can create an environment where the conditions in that relationship make it untenable,
Yeah, that's it.
right?
And yeah, that's it exactly. And so when I think about it, at least for me, this being my most fulfilling relationship, both generally and sexually,
Ooh, thank
um,
you.
it has been. You're very welcome. Thank you. It's been based in no small part on communication. We have been talking, we've been texting, and very directly talking about what it is that we want, what it is that we like, what our sexual appetites
Yeah.
are, those types of
I
things that
think
made it.
we like not for nothing need to do an episode on our version of radical honesty and
Yeah,
transparency because
yeah,
I think people think that they communicate and there's this and I've seen it all over social media and with people like everybody lies, but I can and I don't know, people may not believe us, right? We don't lie to each other.
no, we
We are so brutally, radically, unapologetically honest and transparent about everything
yeah,
that that's that's part of the reason why we've gotten to this place about sex, why we've gotten to this place about all these other things in our relationship that make this the best experience that both of us has ever had, right?
yeah,
It I believe in 100% radical, like even if it hurts, honesty. That means I can take what it is that you're telling me about me in the most honest way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's important too, because I think there are people who are scared to be honest because they're scared of the consequences, right? They're scared of how they'll be thought of, or they're
Right.
scared that the other person is going to
Right.
think, I don't know, maybe they don't find me desirable or don't care about me or those types of things, right? I
Right.
think in this country, and I'm sure lots of countries throughout the world, people are taught like, oh, if a person really loves you, then sex doesn't matter. It's a thing that we tell kids, right? To keep
We are
them to
adults.
have the right.
We
But
are
I'm just
adults.
saying,
Like
there's
I
the
want to
things
bring
that
that
we,
back. We are
yes,
grown.
there you go, right?
Stop doing that.
It's that juvenile sort of, hey, we ain't supposed to be doing this anyway. So
No,
whatever
we
we
are
do,
a
right?
lot.
Exactly. That's precisely what we're supposed to be doing. The
Reason that you got with this person, if we're being real, is not because you knew the inside of them and they showed themselves to you in the most
Listen, the
beautiful way.
clitoris
You
is the only part of a woman's body that is sore. The sole purpose of it is
it's pleasure.
its pleasure. That's the
Right.
only function of it. So if we ain't supposed to do,
Right.
then why we got that? Because
Right.
we
No.
got that straight for the
Yes.
orgasms.
And,
So
and and
like,
this is what I was going to say about relationships is like it was built off some level of physical attraction. You
right,
saw that person
right,
and you found that person desirable. Most of the time, there's a level of physical sexual expression. And there are people who are ace out there who are asexual. I'm not saying that that's everybody in terms of how they relate to the world, but most of the time, that is the first thing that is bringing you together. And then there are all of these other commonalities that really cement you together and keep you together.
right.
The fact is that sex is among those most important things, and if you don't talk about that part of it, and if you don't talk about it honestly, you're going to have a hard time getting to the levels of intimacy and togetherness that you
Right.
might otherwise be able to achieve, right?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's just what it is. And so I think like for our final thoughts, just to make sure that we are just solidifying this for, you know me, I like to codify a thing, put a stamp on it, put a ribbon on it at the at the end of the episode for our listeners. What is it that makes sexual vetting so important, and why is it that you cannot skip this step in a relationship?
Um, Sexual vetting is important because sex is important. And anything that is important in a relationship requires communication, right? And it requires some level of compatibility and ability to work with one another. And so
Right.
that's why you've got to do it. And then the other part of it is that gives you a solid foundation from which to build, no
Right.
matter what answers that you get, and no
Right.
matter what direction you build in, whether it's a relationship that somehow becomes a friendship or a relationship that becomes the closest relationship that you've ever had with anybody on earth, right? Those things are all predicated on truth, knowing one another, being real with one another, and being able to, on a fundamental level, satisfy one another.
Right. And I would say to our listeners, the key tips that I have in terms of your vetting process is to take your time with it, right? It is not a one-off conversation. It is a conversation that happens over time, multiple times. Pay attention to how someone talks about sex, how somebody responds to sex, and pay attention to the answers that you get. Do not read potential in answers. Listen to what someone is telling you and take someone's word for truth. All right. Well, with that being said, that is a wrap for this episode. I want to give a shout out to our contest winner who won the Sex Obviously merch. That is right. That is at Blurred AJ. That merch is coming out to you. We have shipped it out. You should receive it soon. So congratulations to Blurred AJ.
Blurred.
Sex Obviously, I want to remind you guys that we are going on the road. Our next in-person face-to-face event is going to be at Exotica in November, Edison, New Jersey. Come find us at Exotica. We're going to have cool giveaways for folks that see us. We're going to have street interviews happening, all things going on at Exotica. So if you want to meet Dr. Love and Dr. JJ and be on the potty, come see us at Exotica. Don't forget to follow, to like, subscribe, share widely. We are on Instagram at sex_obviously, and we are on all of your podcast platforms. That's a wrap, folks. Thank you.